Hey folks, how's it going? Honkai Star Rail's release is approaching, and before jumping into it, I wanted to take a little bit of a look at the characters available at launch, especially the 4 stars, to try and figure out which ones are going to be the better ones to invest materials early on. This way you can have an easier time running through all of the early game content and set up something for farming to make leveling other characters a little bit easier. Now, a few things I want to take into consideration are a character's role, whether they are single target or an AoE DPS, the amount of damage they can do, either single target or AoE, and how often they're going to use their skills. Because skills do not have a cooldown, but there is a 5 skill points limit for the entire team. Trying to avoid running out of them is going to be really important. So let's start with the MC, the Trailblazer, in its physical form. Of course, all this information is from the final beta and might or might not change upon release. Now, the basic attack for everyone is the exact same. Deals elemental damage equal to 100% of their attack to a single enemy. This is the value for skill level 6, I guess basic skills don't go up to 10, but still, this is always the same. The skills are what they're going to consume their skill point, and already you can see this one deals 125% of the attack to a single enemy and all adjacent enemies, which is a hell of a lot higher than the first skill. So whenever we're talking DPSs, you will want to try and use their skills over their basic attack as often as possible. Preferably every single time. So for the physical Trailblazer, AoE is 125 and adjacent enemies, so it can go up to 375% attack as damage. Skill usage, yeah, I'm going to go and list always in here. And then we move on to their burst. Choose between 2 modes to deliver a full strike. Mode 1, physical damage equal to 450% of the Trailblazer attack to a single enemy, or mode 2, physical damage equal to 270% of a single enemy and 162 to adjacent enemies for 594% damage. Let's go check the passives. Each time the Trailblazer inflicts weakness break on an enemy, the Trailblazer's attack increases by 20%, stacking up to 2 times. A nice 40% attack buff, not bad. Immediately heals all allies 15% of their max HP. This is the technique, which should be the skills that you use outside of combat. 15% heal doesn't actually look that great. Next are the traces, which should be the passives that you unlock by increasing the level cap. So 15 energy at the beginning of battle is going to make using the burst a little bit easier. This is 120 energy. Each stack of talent increases Trailblazer defense by 10%, and the blast attack of skills or ultimate deal 25% more damage to the target enemy. And for this, I guess you target the central enemy and then it blasts the 2 adjacent ones. So this goes to 150 plus 125 by 2, so 400% total damage if you hit all 3 enemies with the skill AoE, and 619 damage if you hit all 3 enemies with the burst. Next are the Eidolons, which are the constellations from Honkai. When enemies are defeated due to the Trailblazer's ultimate, the Trailblazer regenerates 10 energy. Actually not bad. Attacking an enemy with a physical weakness restores HP equals to 5%. Might be useful. I hear there's not that many healers, so whatever we get to restore some HP or protect ourselves is going to be kind of valuable. Eidolon level 3 and Eidolon level 5 are always going to be skill level ups and talent level ups. 25% more crit rate when attacking an enemy with the weakness broken. That's actually pretty good. Trailblazer talent is also triggered when defeating an enemy. It just means it's easier to stack this. So physical Trailblazer is looking like a pretty standard damage dealer. Doesn't really have anything that stands out too much, and when it comes to damage, we'll have to check it against other characters. And so we move on to the fire version of the Trailblazer. This one we should be unlocking later on, and it comes in as a shielder. Basic attack actually enhances into a different version, but at its most basic form, it's always the same 100% single target damage. Whenever they attack though, they also gain 1 stack of magma wheel, which we'll check on later. For this skill, whenever it's used, increases the Trailblazer's damage reduction by 50% and makes them gain 1 stack of magma wheel. In addition, it has a 100% base chance to increase the likelihood of being attacked by all enemies for 1 turn. This is a bona fide taunt. It's going to help protect everyone else in the front line, maybe outside of AoE attacks. When it comes to how often we'll want to use this though, it's going to depend heavily on the fight, how many enemies are there, if we have healers, if the shielding the class itself provides is going to be enough. So I'm going to put this on sometimes to rarely, because especially if you have other supports, if you have other healers, if you have other ways to mitigate damage or control the enemy, you might not need to use an AoE taunt all that often. Next is the burst. Fire damage equals to 100% of Trailblazer's attack plus 150% of Trailblazer's defense to all enemies. The next basic attack will automatically be enhanced and will not cost magma wheel. Okay, so what's the spread between attack and defense? 601 to 606, so it's basically the same. If these stats are close to each other, it should be somewhere around 550% of the attack to all enemies. Now this also enhances the basic skill, which consumes 4 stacks of magma wheel to enhance the basic attack, dealing fire damage equal to 135% of the attack to a single enemy and 54% of the attack to the adjacent ones. So the basic attack can go up to 243% attack as damage. Moving on, the talent. Each time the Trailblazer is hit, they gain 1 stack of magma wheel for a maximum of 8 stacks. And they only consume 4 with the basic skill. When the Trailblazer uses a basic attack, skill or ultimate, they apply a shield to all allies that absorbs damage equal to 8% of their defense plus 34, and it lasts 2 turns. So this is the actual strength of the class. They can basically forego their skill, attack every single turn to act as a skill points battery, and just spam shields every time. 8% of their defense plus 32 doesn't look that high on just 600 defense, but gear will have to come into play eventually. At the start of the next battle, gain a shield that blocks damage equal to 50% of the Trailblazer's defense plus 160 for 1 turn. Okay, this is just something to ease into a fight, especially if you want to use the skill on the first turn, when everyone is alive, not debuffed, and might actually hurt the most. Not bad at all. After using a skill, the damage taken by all allies is reduced by 15% for 1 turn, helps a little bit against AoE attacks, but it's just 15%. Using an enhanced basic attack restores HP by 5% of the Trailblazer's max HP, and considering that we want to try and spam the basic attack almost every turn, this helps bring a lot of sustain. That's actually awesome. Where the Trailblazer is protected by a shield of the beginning of the turn, increase attack by 15% and regenerate 5 energy. And this one helps with the burst as well. 15% of attack is not that great of a buff, but I will take the 5 energy. When it comes to the Eidolons, Trailblazer should be getting these for free, like the MC in Genshin. Whenever they use their basic attack, deal additional fire damage equal to 15% of Trailblazer's defense. When the Trailblazer uses the enhanced basic attack, deal additional fire damage equal to 20% of their defense. Okay, that's actually quite neat. From just the E1, which should be relatively simple to get. E2, the shield applied to the allies will block additional damage equal to 3% of the Trailblazer's defense plus 12, so it goes from 8% to 11% of defense. That's nice. But for the 4, immediately gains 4 stacks of magma wheel at the beginning of each battle, so they can start already dealing AoE damage. And after using an enhanced attack or ultimate, the Trailblazer's defense increases by 10%, stacking up to 3 times. They put Bronze Sailor in here too, that's cute. So yeah, Fire Trailblazer actually looks like a pretty awesome defender. And spam shield every single turn, it's got double stat scaling, and we'll need to check on gear later, but already it looks like the moment you unlock it, that's your MC. As damage dealers, there should be plenty more and possibly better than the physical Trailblazer, but since we are kind of lacking healers, a really nice defender that can help mitigate damage especially like this, spamming shields every single turn, it's going to be pretty damn awesome. Now let's move on to the free-to-play characters. March 7th should be part of the basic team, and so should Heng. After these two, Serval will be given to us as a pre-registration reward, while Quingque and where she, Herta, are rewards from completing some of the basic challenge stages. So let's start from March 7th, an ice presentation little cutie pie. As always, basic attack, 100% of damage to a single enemy. Her skill provides a single ally with a shield that can absorb damage equal to 80% of March 7th defense, plus 320 for 3 turns. If the ally HP is 30% of their max HP or higher, it greatly increases the chance of the enemies attacking that ally. This is just an aggro mechanic, it's not an actual taunt, but again, can help mitigate damage and take it away from the squishy damage dealers. When it comes to skill usage, definitely doesn't look like something you want to use every turn, and especially if you use her as a secondary shielder, this might actually go into the sometimes too rarely as well. Her burst, Glacial Cascade, deals ice damage equal to 150% of March 7th's attack to all enemies. On hit, 50% base chance to be frozen for 1 turn, which is really nice, a little bit of control. While frozen, the enemy cannot act and will take an ice damage over time equals to 50% of March 7th attack at the beginning of each turn. That's 450% of attack as damage, plus 50% from the damage over time, but it's not written how long it lasts. If the ice damage over time is 50% for 1 turn while they're frozen, this is another potential 150%. So it's a 600 attack as damage burst. Next up, her talent, Girl Power. After a shielded ally is attacked by an enemy, March 7th immediately counters dealing ice damage equal to 100% of her attack. This effect can be triggered twice each turn. This actually looks like a really great way to spread some damage. You don't get to choose the targets in a bit of a crowded environment, but still it's up to 200% more damage every single turn. And these seem to be basically made to run with the Fire Trailblazer. Fire Trailblazer spams shields, and this seems to be for any shielded ally, not an ally she puts a shield on herself. So potentially if you run her with the Fire Trailblazer, you don't even need to cast her skill. Trailblazer is taking care of the shielding, and she's just going to sit back and counterattack twice every single turn. That is actually pretty awesome. When it comes to her technique, Freezing Beauty immediately attacks an enemy after entering battle. There's a 100% chance to freeze a random enemy for 1 turn. While frozen, the enemy cannot move and will take ice damage equal to 50% of March 7th attack at the beginning of each turn. The one thing that's a little bit weird here is the scaling, because both her burst, her attack and her talent deal damage based on her attack, while the shielding she provides is based on her defense. When it comes to Tracy's, March 7th skill can remove 1 debuff from the target, actually pretty nice. The duration of the shield generated from her skill is extended for 1 turn, so it can go up to 4. And if you need to shield just 1 character, you can maybe use her skill once every 4 turns, which is pretty rare. And lastly, increases the ultimate base chance to freeze enemies by 15%, going from 50 to 65%. You know what? She actually sounds pretty good too. Again, the only thing is the defense scaling on her shield. If that was attack, you could just focus on 1 stat and be done with it. But if stats are anything like the ones in Genshin, we know that those defense rolls are basically unavoidable. Next are the Eidolons, and hopefully she's a little bit closer to, say, a Barbara than she is to an Ember, so that these are actually pretty easy to get from just getting duplicates from the gacha. First one increases the number of times the talent's counter effect can be triggered each turn by 1. That's another 100% extra attack. When counter is triggered, deals ice damage equal to 30% of March 7th defense, and that's a little bit of a defense scaling on her base attack too. So at E1, that's a potential 490% of attack damage every turn. That's better than the physical Trailblazer. I mean, sure, you need to take 3 attacks, but I wonder how this works against like bosses with AoEs. You know, if you have your entire team shielded by the fire Trailblazer and a boss does a single attack, does it count as 3 allies being hit, so she counters 3 times? We will just have to wait for the release and see, but so far, really loving the counter mechanic, and really loving the Trailblazer pairing. Second one, every time she freezes a target, she regenerates 10 energy, fantastic. Upon entering battle, grants a shield equal to 50% of match 7th defense plus 200% to the ally with the lowest HP percentage for 3 turns, and this already lowers her skill usage even further. And at C6, allies under the protection of the shield granted by her skill restore HP equal to 6% of their max HP plus 48 at the beginning of each turn. This one can go up to 4 turns, so that's a 24% healing. She looks like a fantastic support, and if the Eidolons are any easy to acquire from the standard gacha and she can get up to C6 and become a single target healer, she sounds quite amazing already. Now let's move on to Heng, a Wind Hunt member, so single target DPS. The skill deals wind damage equal to 260% of Heng's attack to a single enemy, and on a critical hit, 100% base chance to reduce target speed by 15% for 3 turns. 260 doesn't actually look that high though. His burst, Ethereal Dream, deals wind damage equal to 400% of the attack to a single enemy. If the enemy is slowed, the ultimate multiplier increases by 120%, going from 400 to 520%. His talent, Superiority of Reach, when Heng is the target of an ally's ability, his next attack's wind resistance penetration increases by 36%. This effect can be triggered again after Heng has taken action one time. This should be to break enemies a little bit easier. While the technique, after using a technique, Heng's attack increases by 40% for 3 turns in the next battle. A little bit of an attack buff, well, 40% is more than little, but still, doesn't look that impressive so far. When the HP is at 50% or lower, reduces the chance of being targeted by enemies. You know, it's okay for a squishy DPS, I guess. When launching an attack, there's a 50% fixed chance to increase speed by 20% for 2 turns. This effect cannot stack. An extra 20% speed is going to allow him to move a little bit faster, so actually not that bad. And here, basic attack deals 40% more damage to slowed enemies, but going from 100 to 140% is really not going to help much. You do want to try and use his skill as often as possible. I guess with the speed buff is going to take a few extra turns, so it can spam the skill a little bit more often, but 260 on a single target looks a little bit low. When it comes to Eidolons, when the enemy hit has HP greater or equal to 50%, increases crit rate by 15%, which is okay, especially since if you want to maximize your damage, you need to have your crits as high as possible. Reduces talent cooldown by 1 turn, but this does not look to have cooldowns. Can be triggered more often, the more buffs you cast on him. Maybe it can stack? I don't know what this means. When using his ultimate to defeat an enemy, Heng's next action is advance forward by 100%. Oh, this is fantastic! A free extra turn on kill. This is actually really good. The slow triggered by the skill reduces enemy speed by an additional 10%, so a 25% slow, and that's actually pretty good too. Again, more speed and more turret control are always going to be very, very welcome. The only thing is that he wants to use his skill every single turn. There is really no reason to go down to the basic attack, even if that basic attack gets improved by 40%. That's actually a bit of a waste of an awakening. On the bright side, he's going to be free, and he might be usable against enemies with wind weaknesses. But other than that, I think we might see him replaced very soon as you touch the gacha basically. So let's move on to Serval, Lightning Erudition, so a nice AoE DPS. Of course, basic attack, 100% of lightning damage. Her skill, Lightning Flash, is a blessed attack, deals lightning damage equal to 120% of her attack to a single enemy, and lightning damage equal to 60% of her attack to adjacent enemies, with an 80% base chance for enemies hit to become shocked for 2 turns. While shocked, enemies will take lightning damage over time equal to 80% of Serval's attack at the beginning of each turn. This actually sounds quite amazing. How much is this total? Hold on. 120 for the single target, plus 60 by 2 for the 2 enemies around it, 80% chance of becoming shocked potentially to all 3 enemies. Let's not count the 2 turns, because this is a nice skill and you might want to use it every single turn, so the shock is going to keep getting refreshed every time. It would be somewhere in the 480% attack damage every turn, if you hit 3 enemies and if the dot lands on all 3. For her burst, she deals lightning damage equal to 180% of her attack to all enemies. Enemies already shocked will extend the duration of their shock state by 2 turns. I guess this is going to help if the skill shock misses, because you want to try and apply this every single time. 540% attack as damage, and it only costs 100 energy. Yeah, I think we're just going to pick all of our experience materials and dump them on Serval the moment she comes in our inbox. Her talent, after she attacks, deals additional lightning damage equals to 60% of her attack to all shocked enemies. That 480 can go up to 660% attack as damage every single turn after the enemies are shocked. She is sounding better and better. Her technique immediately attacks an enemy. After entering battle, deal lightning damage equal to 50% of her attack to a rendered enemy, and all enemies have 100% base chance to become shocked for 3 turns. While shocked, enemies take lightning damage over time equal to 50% of Serval's attack at the beginning of each turn. Okay, so the one thing is that the lightning damage over time actually varies from 50% of her technique to 80% of her skill. Enemies will still be shocked though, that's a free 60% extra damage on hit. When it comes to her traces, Serval's skill has a 20% increased base chance to shock enemies, so it makes it go up to 100%, and the only way the enemies will not be shocked is if they can resist the debuff. She immediately generates 15 energy at the beginning of a battle, fantastic. Upon defeating an enemy, Serval's attack increases by 20% for 2 turns. Again, great. For her traces, she also gets effect hit rate and crit rate. Actually, quite a lot of crit rate. Yeah, I think I just found the priority one to level up. For the Eidolons, the basic attack deals lightning damage equal to 60% of her basic attack damage to random enemy adjacent to the basic attack target. Not great, but at the same time not that bad. If you somehow run out of skill points and you actually need to sacrifice a turn, you can still use this and make use of the extra damage from shocked enemies. Maybe you can miss a turn here and there, even if you really don't want to. And Ko, every time her talent is triggered to deal additional damage, she regenerates 4 energy. That's actually amazing, especially in AoE situations. Serval ultimate has 100% chance to apply shock to enemies not currently shocked, and the effect is the same as her skill. Again, fantastic. When her energy is 50% or higher, basic attack and skill damage is increased by 20%. Really glad they added skill damage in here, it would be a bit of a waste just for basic attack. Actually, she kind of rocks. I mean, not only she looks amazing, she has some pretty nice skills and she can spam shocked like there's no tomorrow. Next up, Quingque, if I pronounce this right. And she is a quantum erudition, so yet another AoE DPS. Oh, the basic attack gets enhanced somehow. On the basic one, tosses 1 jade tile of the suit with the fewest number of tiles in Quingque's current hand, dealing quantum damage equals to 100% of her attack to a single enemy. Her skill immediately draws 2 jade tiles and grants 1 extra turn, increases the damage of Quingque's attack by 28% for 1 turn, and it may be stacked up to 4 times. This is going to completely eat up skill points though. Her burst deals quantum damage equal to 200% of her attack to all enemies and changes all the current jade tiles to the fish suit. Alright, let's see what these tiles are. At the beginning of an ally's turn, so up to 3 times before her own turn if the speeds match, Quingque randomly drops 1 jade tile. The tile may belong to the cracks, dots or bamboo suit, Up to 4 tiles may be held at one time. If Quingque holds 4 tiles of the same suit at the beginning of her turn, she will use up all the tiles and enter the concealed Kong state, improving her attack by 72% and enhancing her basic attack. The concealed Kong state will terminate after the enhanced basic attack has been performed. She can only hold 4, and I don't think she discards the other ones, so getting 4 tiles to match might be a little bit difficult. This enhances her basic though, dealing quantum damage equal to 220% of her attack to a single enemy, and then quantum damage equal to 88% of her attack to adjacent enemies. That's 396% attack as damage. Actually not that high. So the real thing is going to be buffing her attack into the stratosphere to actually allow her to do damage. After using her technique, she draws 2 Jade tiles when the battle starts. Someone out there went full Jay-Z. Do you guys like gacha? So let's gacha with your own damage. The multipliers don't seem to be that crazy though. So the real play for her would be to just to use her burst, which costs 140 energy, for the 4 fish suits, which are going to buff her attack by 72%, plus 28 from her skill, and then deal 220 of that attack to a single enemy and 88 to the other two. She looks like one of those high risk, high reward characters, but there's a lot of high risk in here, especially if there's no way for you to make her gain more energy, because I don't think she's going to get to 4 tiles just with her passive alone. Traces recovers 1 skill point after she uses her skill in battle for the first time. Oh, that's neat. She can get her attack buff for free. When using a skill, increases the damage of the next attack by 10%. That's nice too. Quingque's speed increases by 10% for 1 turn after using the enhanced basic attack from the concealed Kong state. 10% speed is a little bit little, but hey. And when it comes to the Eidolons, 10% more damage from her ultimate. Every time a draw tile is triggered, she generates 1 energy, and that's about 3 energy a return, 4 if one of the characters is actually really fast and starts lapping the other. After using her skill, 30% fixed chance that she will use an additional basic attack after her next basic attack. So again, more gacha on top of the gacha, but this is just a basic attack, might be the basic 100% attack damage. During the enemy's turn, 65% chance for Quingque to draw 1 random Jade tile. This is going to speed up the tile generation a little bit, but again, if you're not drawing 4 of the same seed, it doesn't really matter. Now, on one side, I think they kind of learned their lesson from putting Xiangling in the Abyss, since she's just far too good. And sadly, she doesn't seem to be anywhere near Xiangling's usability. On the other side, she's kind of cute, and the gacha mechanic from her damage brings out the gambler in me. When it comes to skill usage, should be between always and often, and it can even go above always, since you can use multiple skills every single turn. Yeah, no, I don't think this is going to make rushing Abyss the first priority. So we move on to Herta, an Ice Erudition character, and she's the 3rd AoE DPS character we get in a row. Her skill, one time offer, deals ice damage equal to 100% of her attack to all enemies. If the enemy HP is at 50% or higher, damage dealt increases by 20%. Oh, that's actually not bad. So on a 3 enemies fight, her AoE damage can go from 300 to 360%. Her burst deals ice damage equal to 200% of her attack to all enemies, which is 600 clean. And when it comes to her passive, when an ally's attack causes an enemy's HP to fall to 50% of her max HP or lower, Herta will launch a follow-up attack, dealing ice damage equal to 40% of her attack to all enemies. This is free and can potentially be spammed for a nice 120% of damage every time. After using her technique, Herta's attack increased by 40% for 3 turns in the next battle, also not that bad. As for the traces, the damage boost effect of Herta's skill on enemies with high HP increases by an additional 25%, so from 20 to 45. That's actually not bad. And when it comes to skill usage, of course, you want to try and use her skill as often as humanly possible. Second, Puppet. Herta's resistance to crowd control debuffs increased by 35%, actually not bad. And Herta's ultimate deals 20% more damage to frozen enemies. And again, to freeze enemies you need to break them. Well, either you need to break them or you bring another character who can freeze them, like March 7th. For her Eidolons, when the enemy's HP is at 50% or less, the basic attack deals ice damage equal to 20% of her attack, so it goes up from 100 to 120, again not that great. Her crit rate increases by 3% every time her talent is triggered, which is sending enemies from above to below 50% of their HP. On a 3 enemies fight it might happen 3 times per fight, so that's a 9% increase in crit rate. But I've seen some 4 enemies fights and there might be enemies that heal themselves, so this might actually go above the 9%. It's going to take time to stack up, but it doesn't sound that bad. Herta's damage increases by 10% when her talent is triggered, and after using her ultimate, her attack increases by 25% for 1 turn. Honestly, she sounds a little bit basic. I think she's going to shine in fights where there are 4 enemies, maybe 5, but below that number I don't think she's going to do much. March 7th has a potential of 490% of attack damage for 1 turn, and she needs her enhanced skill to do that, if not her burst directly, which March 7th basically copies. So if I needed 1 ice damage dealer or 1 ice support, I would much rather run March 7th over her. Both the free-to-play farmable characters actually don't look that great. So far, if this is the basic setup, looks like the physical Trailblazer gets basically skipped in favor of the Phi one. March 7th also looks pretty damn amazing, and I definitely want to level her up. Heng as a single target DPS might be okay, might not be that okay. I think I want to replace him the moment I get another single target DPS. And Serval, holy hell, Serval. But both Quingque and Herta, maybe if some Abyss floors can really use them and I really need to bring them up to clear it, or if there are some farmable stages in which an ice DPS is really going to shine. Say you need to farm for a specific set of artifacts, say you need to farm for specific farming materials and March 7th doesn't quite cut it, or if an enemy has only a single quantum weakness, then yeah, maybe. But otherwise, I'm not really going to rush for either. Now let's check the gacha options. Let's start with Arlan, a Destruction Lightning character. Basic attack, always the same. Shackle Breaker consumes Arlan's HP equal to 15% of his max HP to deal lightning damage equal to 320% of his attack to a single enemy. This skill cannot be used if Arlan's HP is too low, but this one also costs HP instead of skill points, while his burst lightning damage equal to 350% of a single enemy and 150% of adjacent ones, for a total of 650% damage in an AoE situation. When it comes to the talent, increases Arlan's damage for every percent of HP below his max HP, up to a maximum of 80% more damage. That's a really nice enmity mechanic. For the technique, immediate attacks an enemy after entering battle deals lightning damage equal to 80% of Arlan's attack to all enemies. Now, traces. When Arlan's HP is at 30% or lower, defeating an enemy will immediately restore 20% of his max HP. That's actually pretty nice, so he gets a little bit of self-sustain. Damage over time resistance increases by 50%, okay. When entering battle, if Arlan's HP is 50% of his max HP or lower, he gains a barrier that nullifies the next incoming attack. So you do not actually regenerate HP between fights. That doesn't sound ideal. This means we might need quite a bit of healing, or at least healing techniques, if you want to survive for a long time in the open world, without having to go back and forth to heal at the base, I guess. For the Eidolons, Arlan's HP can be used as long as his current HP percentage is above 5%. If current HP is less than 15, using his skill will reduce his HP to 1. Now, you always want to use his skill, but he consumes HP, so he needs a healer. He himself does not consume SP, which makes him perfect as both a main or a secondary damage dealer, but he's going to make your healer consume a little bit of SP, especially if that healer needs to do double duty and heal both him and a tank or other characters. Still, he might actually be great to keep your team on an SP neutral consumption. Skill damage increases by 10% when using skill, dispels a debuff inflict on Arlan, sounds okay. When struck by a killing blow, instead of becoming incapacitated, restores 25% of his max HP, one time per battle. Actually quite nice, so he doesn't just die. When his HP is lower than 50% of his max HP, increases ultimate damage by 20%, and the damage multiplier on adjacent targets increases to that of the target enemy. So you're telling me that at Eidolons 6, the burst does 20% more damage, going up from 350 to 370, and actually hits everyone for a 1100%. Yeah, I'm switching this to high prio directly. The burst only costs 110 energy too. Still, he looks like a pretty solid mixed DPS. Best part of him is not consuming SP when using skills, so he can act as a secondary damage dealer as long as you have a decent healer. So let's move on to Asta, Fire Harmony. She's our first buffer. Spectrum Beam, always 100%. Her skill, Meteor Storm, is a bounce one. Deals fire damage equal to 50% of attack to a single enemy with 4 more bombardments. Each bombardment deals fire damage equal to 50% of Astra's attack to a random enemy. So 50 by 5, and this is a pseudo AoE. Her burst increases speed of all allies by 45 for 2 turns. Okay, that's our speed buffer. That is actually amazing. Her talent, Astrometry, gains a charging stack for every different enemy hit by Astra, plus an additional stack if the enemy hit has fire weakness. For every charging stack Astra has, all allies' attack increases by 10% up to 5 times. Starting from her second turn, Astra's charging stack count is reduced by 3 at the beginning of every turn. There's this different here though, so really she's only going to be better for AoE and multi-target fights. Otherwise, she gets 1 stack every turn, and this one lowers by 3 against a boss. Against multiple enemies though, you might actually try to upkeep this. 50% attack buff passively doesn't actually sound that bad. Her technique immediately attacks an enemy. After entering battle, deals fire damage equal to 50% of her attack to all enemies. As for her traces, the basic attack has 80% chance to burn enemies for 3 turns, making them take a fire damage over time equal to 30% of her basic attack at the start of each turn. She has no counters though, so you need to use the basic attacks in order to get this burn. It might help in fire teams if there are other characters that synergize with having damage over time on enemies, but otherwise looks kind of mid. When Astra is on the field, all allies' fire damage increases by 8%, sounds okay. Astra's defense increases by 6% for every current charging stack she possesses. I guess she's a support, so a little bit of defense is going to help her stay alive, but otherwise looks like a bit of a waste of a major trace. And for the constellations, Astra's skill will deal damage 1 additional time to the target enemy. Okay, so that's 100% on one enemy for a total of 300% damage per skill cast. After using her ultimate, Astra's charging stacks will not be reduced in the next turn. That's also pretty nice since it helps upkeep her attack buff. Astra's energy regeneration increases by 15% when she has 2 or more charging stacks. So again, any non-single boss fight is going to give her a bit of a buff. And at E6, she loses 1 less charge every turn. I think the fact that you need to hit a different enemy kind of kills her, because otherwise she would gain 5 stacks with Meteor Storm, losing 2 stacks or 3 at the beginning of a turn, and then she can just hit with her basic attack to try and upkeep this. At least, even though you can't get a permanent 50% attack buff for every single character on your team, it can still float between 30 and 40. When it comes to skill use, I don't know. I think she's supposed to be an attack speed buffer, and I definitely like the 45 speed. Meteor Storm, I think it's like between often and sometimes, since you need to cast it to get more stack of astrometry. So yeah, if you get her, it might not be that bad of an idea to level her up, especially if you get like Himeko or Hook, and you want to make those your main DPSs, because they should both have something that works off of having enemies burn. And speaking of burning, let's move on to Hook. Fire Destruction. Hey, remember Hook? Single target plus blessed skill. Fire damage equal to 280% of Hook's attack to a single enemy with 100% base chance to burn them for 2 turns, dealing fire damage equal to 80% of Hook's attack to adjacent enemies. When afflicted by burn, enemies will take fire damage over time equal to 50% of Hook's attack at the beginning of each turn. That's basically the same skill as Serval. She's at 590 potential attack as damage when she casts her skill, when Serval is in the 480 range, so that's a little bit more damage. Oh, this is the enhanced version, hold on there. Her basic single target is just 240 plus 50% for that turn. Her burst deals fire damage equal to 400% of Hook's attack to a single enemy. After using her ultimate, the next skill becomes enhanced, which deals damage to a target enemy and adjacent enemies. Her single target skill still deals more damage than Heng. I still think Heng's main thing is going to be speed, because these numbers kind of low. Single target and enhanced, and she wants to use her skill every single time. Again, even in a single target situation, her skill deals almost 3 times as much damage as her normal attack. Now passives. When Hook attacks a target inflicted with burn, deal additional fire damage equal to 100% of Hook's attack and generate an additional 5 energy. So hey, we found someone to play with Asta. Free 100% more damage, really good too. And burn she applies for multiple turns as well. Her technique attacks an enemy, deal 5 damage, 50% of attack to a random enemy, 100% base chance to inflict burn on all enemies for 3 turns. When afflicted with burn, 50% of Hook's attack damage at the beginning of each turn. This sounds a bit better than the other more basic ones, even if it's only a single enemy. When All to the Flames is triggered, restores 5% of max HP, so every time she attacks an enemy that is suffering from burn, she also self-heals, which is really nice. 35% resistance to crowd control debuffs, really neat as well. And when using her ultimate, Hook has her action advance forward by 20% while also generating 5 more energy. More speed, never a bad thing. When it comes to the skills, Hook's enhanced skill deals 40% more damage, going up to 630 potential AoE, extends the duration of burn by 1 turn, that's also really nice. Even though she should be applying it often enough, so when Hook's talent is triggered, 100% base chance to burn the target and adjacent enemy for 2 turns. Enemies inflicted with burn, again 50% attack damage at the beginning of each turn. And this is on talent, so she burns and burns off top of burning. Not bad at all. And 20% more damage to enemies inflicted with burn. Now, if by mistake you end up with an enemy that's weak to fire, she's actually sounding really nice. That is a lot of burning and a lot of burn synergy. She sounds like a pretty decent fire DPS, so yeah, I would say mid to high priority, if you can get her. I don't know much about these destruction characters, considering that in most fights once you kill the ads all you're left with is the main boss in the middle. Destruction characters might be a bit better than erudition ones in general stages. Her burst being single target doesn't actually hurt that much either, cause after the burst comes the enhanced skill that picks up the damage. Next up, Natasha, Physical Abundance. She's going to be our first healer. Her skill heals a single ally for 15% of her max HP plus 120, and heals the ally of another 10% of her max HP plus 80 at the beginning of each turn for 2 turns. HP scaling healer, actually not that bad. As for how often we will want to use this skill is actually going to depend on which enemies we're going to fight against and how much damage they can inflict. Because again, if I'm already running Trailblazer MC and March 7th, hopefully I'm going to have enough defense and enough shielding to not need a healer. But if, say, I want to run Arlan, then that love, heal and choose is going to become really important. And while I won't be using it every single turn, I think this demands a cast every 3 turns, so I don't think the heal is going to go on rarely, but at least sometimes. Her burst heal all allies 18% of her max HP plus 148, so again you build her full HP and that's it. When healing allies with values of 30% of their max HP or lower, increases outgoing healing by 50%, that is fantastic. Immediately attacks an enemy, deals physical damage equal to 80% of her attack to a random enemy, with 100% base chance to weaken all enemies. Enemies weakened deal 30% less damage to allies for 1 turn. I don't know. I think there are breaking skills that might be a little bit more useful, either those or skills that grant shields. Natasha's skills removes 1 debuff from an ally. That's pretty great, so this might go from sometimes up to often. Increases outgoing healing by 10%, increases the duration of her skill continues healing for 1 turn. Oh, that's fantastic. So if you don't need that much healing, or if you can get by with just her burst, you can use her skill once every 3 to 4 turns, which actually goes from sometimes to rarely to sometimes. And she can actually be a very nice skill points battery. For her Eidolons, after being attacked, if her current HP is 30% of her max HP or lower, she heals herself once for 20% of her max HP plus 160, 1 time per battle. Free healing, that's okay. Using her ultimate grants continuous healing to all allies with HP at 30% or lower for 1 turn. At the beginning of their turn, 10% of Natasha's max HP plus 80. Oh, this is fantastic! Natasha generates 5 energy after being attacked, that's okay. Basic attack deals additional physical damage equal to 40% of her max HP. It's funny that she even gets some scaling here. How high can HP go though? At level 80 she gets 8000 from here. Let's see light cones, let's see 4-star light cones if there's anything for abundance. Stats, they give another 1000 HP. And then we come to gear, that's 700 HP from the hand, flat attack, body 43% HP, speed 43% HP, even though there's a speed stat down here. And for a healer, you might want the speed stat. Planar sphere is just damage type, so for her another 43% HP. And link rope, it's got to be either regen 19% or even more HP. Yeah, it's 6 stats in here. You can go triple HP with speed, potential HP 1100 plus the healing light cone. Let's go for a 4-star. This should be a little bit easier to get. 8000 HP. Then we got the head, which is 700, and then it's 43% should be on the 1100 base, and this is speed, HP, so multiplied by 3. So she should be getting somewhere in the 4000 HP range, so that's a 600 HP heal, plus 120, so yeah, 750 HP heal, while her burst is going to heal 18% plus 148. 900 HP healing from her burst, 1/4 of her total HP though. I'm getting half a feeling that even with healing, you still kind of want some damage mitigation, cause a healer might not be able to keep up. Still, she's the only 4-star healer, and Abyss requires 2 teams. If you're already shielded on one, you kind of need a healer for the other. So if you get her, you might be kind of forced to level her up. So we move on to Pela, Ice Nihility. She's the first debuffer we see. Always standard normal attack. Her Frostbite removes 1 buff and deals ice damage equal to 240% of Pela's attack to a single enemy. And this is also the first dispel we come across. Her ultimate deals ice damage equal to 140% to all enemies, with a base chance of 100% to inflict the exposed status. Exposed enemies have their defense reduced by 42% for 2 turns. And again, this is the first time we come across a defense debuff. 2 turns, 42% sounds actually quite high too. If Pela's attacks inflict a debuff on the enemy, she additionally gains up to 10 energy. But this is just the burst, unless breaking also counts as a debuff. So when you break an enemy with ice, you do inflict frostbite on them. Her technique immediately attacks an enemy upon entering battle. Pela deals ice damage equal to 80% of her attack to a random enemy, with 100% base chance of lowering the defense of all enemies by 20% for 2 turns. This looks like a pretty great preemptive strike too. 20% defense down for free before hitting them with the 42% from her burst. Sounds pretty neat. As for her traces, 20% more damage to debuffed enemies. When she's on the battlefield, all allies effect hit rate increases by 10%, a bit low but still helpful, and using skills to remove buffs increases the damage of Pela's next attack by 20%, another bit of a damage buff. When an enemy is defeated, she generates 5 energy, that's great. It's on E1 too. After using Pela's skill to remove a buff, her speed increases by 10% for 2 turns, a bit low, but again, speed buffs, really good. After she uses her ultimate, all enemies receives 50% more toughness damage from corresponding types for 2 turns. This might actually be fantastic. It's going to help us break enemies even faster. When she attacks a debuffed enemy, she deals additional ice damage equal to 80% of her attack to that enemy. I don't know, she looks sort of okay. I do like the defense down, and her burst also doesn't have that low of a damage modifier compared to other characters. I don't think she's going to see much use in the early game, since enemies should not be difficult to take down, but once you get into the later stages of the Abyss, this 42% defense down might become really important. So I'm going to say that in the early game might sleep on her a little bit, but once we get to the endgame stages, she might become a really nice support, with her skill only being used sometimes to rarely for the dispel. Sadly, she's not going to bring that much damage since she will be using her basic attack most of the time, but that basic attack, especially if you can get some constellations, also gets boosted a little bit. Moving on, Sampo with Nihility, second wind character and actually another debuffer. His skill throws a dagger that deals wind damage equal to 56% of a single target. The dagger will bounce randomly between enemies up to a maximum of 4 times, each dealing wind damage equal to 56% of his attack. Now this actually doesn't sound that bad. It bounces 4 times after the first hit, so it's up to 224 damage when the skill gets cast. The bounce should still work on a single enemy, hopefully. Surprise Present deals wind damage equal to 160% of his attack to all enemies, with 100% base chance to increase the damage over time taken by 30% for 2 turns. Oh, if this also affects characters like Serval, he might actually be nice as a secondary DPS. Oh yeah, not only Serval, Hook too. And again, 480, it's a little bit below standard, so I don't think he's going to be in the main DPS category. So he's likely going to use his skill often to sometimes just to generate energy. Now his talent. Sampo's attacks have a 65% base chance to inflict wind shear for 3 turns. Enemy inflicted with wind shear will take wind damage over time equal to 48% of Sampo's attack at the beginning of each turn. Wind shear can stack up to 5 times. Again, attacks should be anything, so even skills, and this means that all of the enemies on the screen should be inflicted with wind shear. If this can stack up to 5 times, does this go up to 250% damage over time every turn? Because, oh yeah, this might be OE as well. 240% from his damage over time, but then this gets boosted by 30%, so it's potentially 312 damage on a single character every turn, on top of the damage he already deals. Unless a lot of enemies have very high resistances, or unless this is really hard to stack for some reason, like this doesn't sound that bad. Shining Bright throws a flash bomb towards the enemy, inflicts blind for 10 seconds. Blinded enemies won't detect the presence of your team. When attacking an enemy blinded by flash bombs, 100% fixed chance to delay all enemies' action by 15% when entering combat. And this is a pretty great technique since it doesn't immediately start combat. This is a nice supportive one too. Extends the duration of wind shear by 1 turn, but it's already 3, so doesn't really matter all that much. Using ultimate generates 10 energy, so you can spam the ultimate a bit more often. Enemies with wind shear deal 15% less damage to Sampo. This is kind of meh. Little bit of damage reduction. When Sampo uses a skill, throwing dagger gained 1 more bounce attack, so it bounces 6 times for another 56%. When an enemy with wind shear is defeated, 1% base chance to inflict 1 stack of wind shear equal to talent on all enemies. Hey, yeah, that doesn't sound that bad either. When Sampo's skill hits an enemy with 5 or more stacks, the current wind shear immediately deals 10% of its current damage. Sampo's talent's wind shear multiplier is increased by 10%, so 58% at C6 though, or potentially 377% of attack as damage whenever an enemy moves with 5 stacks on him. To be completely honest, if you can stack wind shears, it doesn't actually sound that bad, especially if you can pair him with characters that also benefit from increased damage over time, like the burns from Hook or the shocks from Serval. He might actually be a decent secondary DPS. And yeah, I really wouldn't mind trying a damage over time team with them. Now let's move on to a super cutie. I love that they brought Sushang over, and even more that they gave her the chicken fuhua burst. That's too funny. She is the one character I really hope I pull as soon as possible as I start the game. These don't even matter to me. So, Night Sword Art, Stellar Halo as usual, 100% of attack to a single enemy. Per skill, 210% of attack to a single enemy. In addition, 33% chance to trigger Sword Stance, dealing additional physical damage equal to 100% of attack to the enemy. If the enemy is in weakness break, Sword Stance is guaranteed to trigger. So already off the bat we start with potentially 310% attack as skill damage. Her burst deals physical damage equal to 320% of her attack to a single enemy and advances forward her action by 100%. A free extra turn, always fantastic to see. In addition, her attack increases by 30% and using her skill has 2 additional chances to trigger Sword Stance for 2 turns. So on top of the 320, she can trigger Sword Stance twice for another 200% attack, so 50% of the original, so it's only 50%, never mind, 420. Flowing Blade, when there's an enemy with weakness break, her speed is increased by 20% for 2 turns. Amazing! Arts Rush, attacks an enemy, 50% of attack as physical damage to all enemies. This I don't really like. But again, even if she's going to be the main DPS, there's going to be better techniques to use at the beginning of a fight. For the Traces, when her HP is at 50% or lower, reduces the chance of being attacked by enemies, which is okay. Every Sword Stance triggered, the damage dealt by Sword Stance increases by 3% up to 10 times. So from 100 to 130, down to 65%, and this is 450% burst damage if it triggers both the Sword Stances. At A6, after using basic attack or skill, if there's enemies on the field with weakness break, Sushang's action is advances forward by 15%. This is a mistake, she wants to use her skill, always. She sounds like a fantastic main DPS. Decent damage, high speed, lots of extra turns. She's going to be my top priority. Maybe second to Serval, but she's going to be my top priority if I manage to get her. If the target of her skill has a weakness break, recover 1 skill point after using the skill. Her E1 gives her her own battery. What's better than this? After triggering Sword Stance, 20% damage reduction for 1 turn. Again, not that bad. Break effect increased by 50%. That also sounds really, really good. Her talent speed boost can stack up to twice. Additionally, after entering the battle, she immediately gains 1 stack of speed boost. 40% extra speed for 2 turns as long as there's an enemy with weakness break. She starts with 107 speed too, that's fast. Her attack looks a bit low. I think I've seen characters with the attack over 600, but at 107 speed with 20% here and up to 40% if you can get her to E6, plus the forward action increases, plus the extra turn, I don't think I'll be able to hold myself back. She's going to be my top priority and I'm just going to level her up and keep playing with her until endgame. The one character that can top her off at this point would be maybe Pela, but for physical weaknesses, enemies, yeah, no, Sushang is going to be in my team. You can count on that. And so we move on to the last one, Tingyun. Lightning Buffer increases the attack of a single ally by 50% up to a value no greater than 25% of Tingyun's current attack and blesses the ally. The blessed ally deals additional lightning damage equal to 40% of their attack when hitting enemies for 3 turns. Bless is only active on the most recent receiver of Tingyun's skill, so she could potentially buff attack for multiple characters, but really Soothing Melody might be used once every 3 turns, so already this goes to sometimes. This is something that you likely want to put on your main damage dealer and use every 3 turns to keep it there. Her burst regenerates 50 energy for a target ally and increases the target's damage by 60% for 3 turns. That's actually quite a lot, Jesus. And this goes on top of the attack buff and lightning damage increase. Actually sounds quite amazing. Need to check how easily 125 energies are achievable though. Her talent, Violent Sharknado, upon hitting the enemy, she deals extra lightning damage equal to 60% of the attack of the blessed character. Yet another reason to keep the blessing onto your main damage dealer. This is 160, but the 60 is 60% from the attack of your highest DPS. So even her normal attack gets boosted up nicely by this. Gentle Breeze, Tingyun immediately regenerates 50 energy upon using her technique. And this is something you do outside of the fight, so you could potentially start with your burst loaded up already. Tingyun's speed increases by 40% for 1 turn after using her skill, and these are the speed buffs we want to see. Basic attack damage increased by 40%, so her basic attack is starting to hit as high as some character skills. She immediately regenerates 5 energy at the start of her turn, which is also pretty amazing, especially considering that she gets more speed in here. And for the Eidolon, she blesses ally speed by 20% for 1 turn after using her ultimate. Another speed buff, 20% is not that small of a buff too, so really nice. The blessed ally regenerates 10 energy after defeating an enemy. These can only be triggered once per turn. She also buffs energy for your main DPS. What is this character? Damage multiplier of Blast increases by 20%, so from 40 to 60% extra lightning damage for your DPS, and the energy regenerated by her ultimate for the target increases by 10, going from 50 to 60. Not going to lie, she looks kind of amazing. Great buffer, little bit of an energy battery since she only uses her skill sometimes, and she buffs attack, speed, damage, while also bringing lightning damage and extra lightning damage for your main DPS. One question I have is if said main DPS also gets extra weakness break stats, if that weakness break also affects the lightning weaknesses. If it does, this is another top priority. That is a very easy top priority to give. With everything said, the characters who are going to get most of my attention in the early game are definitely going to be Fire Trailblazer, definitely going to be March 7th, and I do want to run both in the same team, while Serval is going to be my main DPS, and the 4th member is going to be someone that comes out of the gacha, be another main DPS, or whatever 5-star I get from the guaranteed discounted banner, because 5 stars I haven't looked into, but apparently they're all really good. Quingque and Herta are a bit of a disappointment, especially since they're both free and they both look pretty cute. But again, whether I decide to level one of them up or not is going to depend mostly on which kind of content we're going to have to face, mostly how many enemies are there in front of us. From the gacha, I definitely want to keep an eye out for Arlan, especially if I manage to get Natasha as well, while Sushang is just so freaking cute and I would love to get her, and Tingyun looks broken, looks really broken. And again, with these three, I think Sampo might be fun to run to boost Serval's damage over time even more. Otherwise, it's just going to be whatever 5-star can get out of the guaranteed banner that we get in the early game. Hook looks great, looks like she's got some really nice modifiers, but I don't know, as damage dealers there should be plenty of other options. Say I managed to pull Himeko from the standard banner, I would likely want to focus my resources on her. Asta as a buffer looks okay, especially for the speed. You know, giving that speed buff to Sushang or Heng would be really nice, but I don't know how to feel about maintaining her attack buff, especially in single target situations. And I think that's about it. 3 first priority and 3 characters to keep an eye out of from the gacha. Alright then, that's going to be it for me for the moment. Hopefully this also helped you pick and choose a few characters to level up early in the game, and as always, thanks a lot for watching and see you soon. Ciao!